1. Back in the mid-2000s, I had a wonderful opportunity to discover that hardcore evangelical Christianity might not be the best fit for me. Parents sent me and my 4 younger sisters to a fire conference in a state that is known for bourbon and religious intolerance. Setting is a huge convention center with a bunch of unrelated activities going on in the other areas. This was a 3-day event where 5,000 to 6,000 teens are crammed into one room, severely taxing the ventilation system. All the sexual frustrations of thousands of horny teens were turned towards the praising of God, and general, "We're so much better than anyone who doesn't agree with us. Those poor souls condemned to hell." For a time, I was one of them. Then halfway through the second day, the next speaker gets up to the podium. Mid to late 40s, overweight and out-of-shape white guy. Pretty standard for the course. The only real difference was the amount of jowls on this pastor. And then he opened his mouth and showed what an entitled person he was.
"I've been brought here today by God himself to tell y'all the way to be saved from the evils of society. These modern electronics, music, computers, and DVDs." By the end of his introduction, he was already red-faced and had profuse sweat around his armpits from marching around the stage with wild gesticulation. It only got better from there. "My children are properly homeschooled, with the only book that matters, as should you all be." He holds up a Bible. "This is all you need to learn from to be successful in life. There ain't no computers in my house, and there's no TV. Those are the works of the devil." At this point, the general mood of everyone there was listening. Listening for him to get to the biblical message that he was surely getting to. We would be waiting a while. "Now, I know that there are people who believe that computers and DVDs can be used to spread the word of God. I'm here to tell you that they are wrong. God says not to use the tools of the enemy, lest you be corrupted by them and condemned to hell. There is no good that can come from computers, or TV, and especially from DVDs. They have never been in my house and never will be. I encourage you youth leaders to take this message back to your churches and live a life free from simple temptation of these tools the enemy is using to divide us." Reluctant mumbling from the audience along the lines of, he has a point about being materialistic, and how good things can be used for ill purposes. It's amazing how much mental gymnastics can be used to fit wild ideas into a reasonable narrative. Of course, he was only getting started. The best was yet to come. "I'm so proud of y'all for being here to hear the word of the Lord. In this very building, I say this very building, there is a collection of sinners and Satanists gathering at their so-called psychic fair. Can you believe it? I'm going to lead us in prayer now to pray that the light of Jesus shines upon their souls and burns away the corruption so that they may see the light." Cue 5-minute-long rant/prayer where he goes on about all their sins. "Amen. I'm so proud of you all for being here instead of that so-called Christian rock band, Casting Crowns, that is performing down the way. A bunch of degenerate lunatics they are. There is no such thing as Christian rock music. And the man have piercings. God says not to defile the temple of your body." At this point, the ventilation system turned on for everyone who was done with this guy. For those unfamiliar, Casting Crowns is a contemporary Christian rock band. Basically the same old lyrics to rock music. That was about the only exposure to outside culture many of us had. This continued on for a while. All the while, the auditorium continued to get colder and tenser. Finally, he started to wrap up. "Again, I know it might not be popular to hear, but the truth must be told. Good Christians," he waved towards his family and then the audience, "will say no to the evils of rock music, computers, TVs, and DVDs." He hands the mic to the coordinator and walks off the stage. Coordinator:
Let's all pray and consider the words of Brother James to consider how we may apply them to our hearts. Brother Eric, please come up and share the success your team has had in your missionary work in Guatemala.
If someone could hook up the laptop and pull up the PowerPoint slides, I'll share a few photos.
At this point, we collectively have not a single idea how to respond to what just happened. So 6,000 kids and chaperones sit in total silence while he hooks up a laptop to the AV cords. It takes well over a minute. He proceeds to show a bunch of slides of all the things they are doing. Building houses, running water lines, saving souls, all the feel-good stuff. He started to close.
If you want to support our mission work, we have some DVDs of the locals singing gospel music in the back. You can pick up for $20.
At that, something broke inside of me. I excused myself to go to the restroom to avoid cracking up in hysterical laughter. Once outside the hall, I took a moment, then decided to visit the psychic fair. I was not overcome by foul demons, nor was I hauled away to be sacrificed. Instead, I saw a bunch of cool rocks and really laid-back fun people. Youth leader drove us all back to Southwest Ohio at the end of the next day, and we were still shell-shocked. Fast forward to today. I'm happily married for 8 years, polyamorous, involved in the kink community, listen to rock, build my own computer, watch Netflix on the TV, but recently, I did something truly horrifying. I bought a copy of Inside Out on DVD. But don't tell anyone about that last bit. Truly, I am thankful for the speech that entitled pastor gave those long years ago. His words are what it took to save me from descending into the pit of depravity that is owning too many DVDs. 2. So backstory. This happened a few years ago. Cast Karen, not her real name obviously. Me, Mary, Karen's daughter, not entitled. Karen's true victim. Mom, my mother. Anna, best friend who's known me since preschool. Anna's mom, best friend's mom. GC, guidance counselor. Random dad, some other student's dad. I live in the US in a small town, and when I was a young kid I was close friends with the girl who lived next door. However, her mother was a little off, to say the least, and didn't hesitate to make it obvious her dislike of me and my family. I wouldn't find out why until I was an adult, and it was explained to me by another friend whom we'll call Anna. Basically, my parents smoke pot. A lot of it. To the point where they would basically be hotboxing the entire downstairs every morning. Both of them are extremely hard-working and successful, so I don't blame them. I grew nose-blind to the smell, as my friend Anna explained to me when we were older. I would show up at school almost every day reeking of marijuana, even though I never physically touched the stuff until I was an adult. I'm also on the autism spectrum, but it's hard to notice save for some social awkwardness and inability to make eye contact. However, when combined with the smell of pot, people assume something else entirely. Other parents in our neighborhood noticed it, but other than them making random excuses when trying to plan a sleepover at my house, they never treated me any differently. With the exception of Anna's mom, who would always try to bring me to church with them. Love you, other mom. Not Karen. She made it very clear I was beneath both her and Mary, and boy did she let me know it. She always tried to push her to do better than me at everything, even when we were friends. We ended up drifting apart due to differing interests as we got older, but there was no animosity, except for Karen. It hurt, but I felt more bad for Mary than I did for myself. Karen was batshit crazy strict and abusive to Mary. One of those insane tiger mom helicopter parents. This will be an important detail later. It was so bad to the point where if my parents caught us doing something wrong as kids in the backyard, me and my sister would beg our mom not to tell Karen out of fear of what she would do to Mary. And our mom would always agree. See, here's the thing about Mary. Both Karen, her husband, and Mary's younger sister are very, very pale, whereas Mary is very, very obviously mixed race. Strangely, Karen's husband was the much nicer of the two and seemed to love Mary dearly. I feel bad for him. He was a nice guy, but he had this nervous laughter demeanor that some men have when their wives have made them terrified of everything. I'm convinced the only reason he put up with it was because he loves his daughter so much. The state I live in, students in public schools have to take a series of standardized tests every year up until grade 10. In the final year, the scores of the students are grouped together and the top 25% of students are given a tuition waiver to any state school of their choosing. Come senior year, the scholarship recipients are announced at the end of the year on senior night, with all the students and their parents present. When the names were called, me and a few dozen other students were listed for the tuition waiver, but Mary wasn't. She received a few small grants and I believe a few scholarships, just not that particular one. Well, Karen was furious. See, Mary actually had a higher student ranking than me. She was in the top 25% graduating GPAs where I wasn't. This was due to me being really sick and missing a lot of school first term and struggling to make up all the work. But I digress. My mom and I were walking out of the auditorium when we see Karen screaming at the guidance counselor.
So are you telling me these were decided 2 years ago?
Yes, ma'am. That particular scholarship is awarded based on the state's standardized test scores, which are taken at grade 10.
So you're telling me all the hard work my daughter did is all useless because some crack baby pothead is good at taking tests? How do you know she didn't cheat?
Ma'am, the tests are all held in a controlled room, strolled by proctors. Your daughter took the same exact test. Now, I'm going to ask you to calm down and lower your voice, or I will call the resource officer.
Karen stares at him for a moment before huffing and storming out, presumably towards her family. I thought that was the end of it, until we got into the parking lot. Me and my mom were going out to dinner with Anna and her mom, and our moms were off to the side chatting against Anna's mom's car, while me and Anna were sitting in the front seats of my car a few cars down. All of a sudden we hear a tapping on the window. I look up to the ugly face of Karen. Instinctively and stupidly I roll down the window.
So, are you excited for your 3 years of partying before you become a hobo?
Excuse me?
You must be excited. You get to screw around for free, party and do drugs, while all the hard-working, deserving students lose an opportunity.
I should point out now that's not how tuition waivers work. And to maintain this particular scholarship, I had to maintain a high GPA. I don't party or do drugs.
Don't give me that crap. Everyone in town knows who you are and what you do. It's disgusting, frankly.
Just as I was about to reply, Anna's and my mom run over. Get away from them, now.
Why? So she can grow up being a half-dead zombie like you?
If you don't get away from my daughter, the only one that's going to be half-dead is you. Oh, and another thing, beating your own daughter half to death won't make her grow up to be the same color as your cuck husband. Karen lunged at my mom, but my mom grabbed her arms and slammed her against the side of the car before wailing on her, and Anna's mom joined in. Meanwhile, me and Anna were too terrified to get out of the car. After a few minutes, a few men came and pulled Karen away from our moms. But that didn't stop her from screaming.
I'm going to call the cops, and I'm sure they'll like what they find when they search your house.
Random Dad says.
And I'm sure they'll be very interested in our statements of how you harassed these 2 girls and then try to attack their mother.
He probably thought we were sisters. Another man chimes in.
If I were you, I'd start running real fast.
She actually did start running, but the resource officer caught her before she could get to her car. He handcuffed her, and soon more cops and cars show up and start questioning everyone. Luckily, enough present saw what happened that my mom didn't get in trouble. Karen ended up doing community service and lost her job at a neighboring school district. I guess picking fights on school property isn't a good idea for students or faculty. P.S. Mary ended up getting away from Karen, and after a hard college partier, I'm finally free of my crazy mother phase. She graduated and is doing very well now. Edit. Yes, I know what my parents did growing up was wrong too, and that's a lesson I'll take with me when I have my own kids. However, they did their absolute best to provide for us, and because of that, we lived very well off, so I can't blame them too much. 3. Hi all. I'm going to preface this story with a bit of background on myself. I'm a 17-year-old female with multiple invisible disabilities, none of which are contagious. I sometimes wear a mask in public places, especially places with children in them. Children are already interested in my interestingly colored hair. and my immune system sucks too much to be taking any risks. Nothing I have is contagious, but at the time of this story a few months ago, there were 4 measles cases in my direct area, and more in the surrounding areas. Key just in case, EM, entitled mother, SK, small kid, me. The story starts at a park I live near. It's about 5 or 6 streets down from my own, and as I don't have enough stamina to walk, I drive my car there. All praise the Batmobile, my lovely rogue. I sometimes visit the park and sit and draw, as it is a very calm place usually. It's not super busy except on weekends, and after 3 when schools get out. The park is surrounded by houses that all face it. This is important for later. This day I was sitting at the bench that was farther away from either of the play areas. I was sitting down and drawing a moth. I draw a lot of bugs. When I immediately felt a presence appear to the right of me. I have sensory issues, so I'm not really comfortable with random things happening around me, especially being surprised with a living, breathing human. I look to my left and see EM, who plopped SK right next to me, basically shoving him into my side. This startled me to the point where I immediately jumped a bit and jerked away. I look up at EM in shock as she looked down at me in discontent. She said something to me, but in the moment I didn't have enough time to process the thought of taking my earbuds out and interrupting arcade fire. Suddenly, EM bends down and jerks my earbud out of my ear, so it made my ear ring.
You should listen when adults are talking to you, young lady.
Pardon? You caught me off guard. Was there something you needed? She huffed loudly and tapped her long nail extensions against her hips. There's a reason I call where I live Entitledville. Everyone there is a stuck-up individual whose husbands don't love them.
I'm leaving SK with you. I have work to do around the house.
She then immediately turned around to go back to her house, which I later found out was one of the houses that faced the park. Immediately stood up, cane in hand, and started after her when I noticed that I accidentally knocked SK to the ground. SK wasn't crying at all, just looked confused. This is when I noticed that SK had mucus dropped everywhere, and he looked super sickly. Ma'am, you can't just leave me with...
Wait, is he sick?
EM runs to SK to see if he's okay, somehow not yelling about how I hurt her baby, which is out of the ordinary.
Yes, he's still building up his immune system, and you need to take care of him. You can't get sick if you're sick already.
Then it clicked. The bitch thought that because of my mask I was sick, and therefore could take care of her clearly very ill child. I'm sorry, but no. I have a weak immune system, and now I have to go home and shower off whatever germs you just put next to me. Please, lady, take your kid to a doctor. He looks terrible.
Don't tell me what to do with my child. We don't do doctors in this family anymore. Not since they tried to vaccinate SK over and over again.
My heart sank as I realized what I was up against. I had gotten whooping cough just a few months before this incident, and I was, and still am, struggling from the lingering effects, even though I'm fully vaccinated. What if this kid had something serious? My flight or fight responses kicked in, and immediately told me to run to my car. I grabbed my sketchbook and pencils and started running, totally ignoring my bad joints and muscles in the process. That sprint really messed me up for a few days.
Where are you going, young lady? You can't just leave my child here. I'll call the police on you for child endangerment.
I couldn't even come up with a response, so I said nothing and continued running. I jumped in my car out of breath and turned on the ignition. That's when I saw EM, SK in hand, running towards the Batmobile. Without a word, I pressed on the gas, nearly missing EM as she was about to run into the middle of the street. She was yelling other profanities and stuff behind me as I sped off. I drove past the park a few weeks later and saw EM talking with a neighbor in front of her house, which was for sale. I heard from a mutual neighbor that her husband got a job somewhere in Germany. And I'm now just glad she's gone and I can sketch in peace. For all I care, Germany can have her. 4. Background. This happened just a few weeks after I finished culinary school. I had recently took a trip with my ex, then boyfriend, to a beach resort. My dad had given me some money, and I figured it was a good time to get away after all the stressful days I had leading up to graduation day. It was perhaps the late part of April that we took a trip. I live in the Philippines, and that was summer season around the time. I had gotten a present from a longtime friend of mine as a graduation gift before we made the trip. We had been friends since I was in high school and have kept in touch to this day. He knew I was very into getting tattoos since I was about 16, but have not been able to due to the fact that my family is overly religious, even though I'm an openly vocal atheist and doesn't like the idea of tattoos in general. So he got me the next best thing, a full set of 3D tattoos. Now 3D tattoos are sort of like the semi-permanent tattoos you can buy off eBay or Amazon. But the one difference is the detail and quality. It looks like a real, permanent tattoo. Only up close you can see it's not a permanent one. You apply it like the semi-permanent ones, use a damp cloth and press it onto the skin a bit, and let the thing sit for a while and peel off. It's really great and washes out in probably 2 to 3 weeks depending on if you scrub it hard or is exposed to the sun frequently. I was very happy to receive the set and did put like 4 of them on me in strategic places, so they really did look like they were real. It was very nice to look at, especially when we, X and I, were at the beach. I got some compliments here and there. It was very nice. Overall, we stayed 3 days and 2 nights at the resort, did a lot of fun stuff and ate good food. When we got back from the trip, my mom called me and told me she needed me to go talk with my godfather, who was her cousin from my grandma's side. She told me that she was selling off one of her rental properties to him, and she wanted me to look over the terms and other agreements and send her a copy so she can sign them. I told her okay, and set up the meeting. My mom lives in the US with my dad, and after turning 18, she lets me handle things like these for her. Sorry for the long background, but all the information had to be said so y'all can follow the story. My godfather told me to meet him in their restaurant. He didn't want me to go to his office because he wanted an excuse to take a long break. I arrived at the place around the start of the lunch rush, around 11:30. Place was a bit packed. The staff knew me and they told me I can go sit down at one of the booths as my godfather was running a bit late. My aunt chatted me up for a bit, so did my cousin, but they soon went back to help the staff because more people were coming in. After maybe a few minutes of waiting, there's a woman with her kids getting seated at the table across from me. The woman looked to be about in her early 30s, while her kids were aged 7 or 8, and maybe 2. Kid was in a stroller, so I wasn't so sure. Kids looked Japanese. I was guessing their dad might be since it was clear that their mom was a Filipina like me. I didn't really pay much attention to them. I was on my phone mostly, with my Bluetooth earphones, watching reruns of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, while drinking a large glass of iced tea. I have always been sensitive of people staring at me, and I could almost feel it when people do that. When I looked up, the older kid was staring at one of the temporary tattoos I had. I was wearing a shirt with some tight jeans at the time, so just 2 out of 4 of the 3D tattoos I put on me was visible. I had one in my right lower arm, and one in my left upper arm. Both were colored tattoos. One was of a geisha, Japanese woman, holding a red parasol, and the other was an Asian dragon. I decided to ignore it and go back to watching, but then the kid approaches me. This is how it went down. Cast, me, small kawaii potato. CK, curious kid. EM, entitled mother. M, manager, my cousin. A, aunt, co-owner. G, godfather.
Hey, what's that?
Pointing at my tattoos. Oh, these? They're tattoos. See? This one's a dragon. This other one is a geisha.
Tattoos? Geisha? What's that?
Not really knowing how to explain what the fuck a geisha is without risking the child's innocence. Well, geisha is a Japanese term for women who entertain people and make people feel happy. Tattoos are body art. They're like paintings, but people draw them on your skin using special tools and ink.
Wow, I like painting. So like Mommy? Haba-san said Mommy made other people feel happy too, and that's how she met Daddy. So Mommy is a geisha.
I'm partially stunned at that info. Oh, okay.
I really like your body painting. Bye!
Runs back to their table. I smile and go back to my shows. Not even 2 minutes later when the mom suddenly decides to walk up to me and yank out my earphones and practically yell at my face.
Excuse me, why did you tell my son I am a geisha?
What?
My son told me you told him I was a geisha because I made people feel happy.
Oh, sorry. He was just asking about my tattoos and asked what they were. I showed her my 2 visible tattoos. I guess I got things mixed up. I'm really sorry. EM gasps and her eyes go wide upon seeing my tattoos.
Oh my God.
What are you even doing here? Why did they let you in? You shouldn't be here. Sorry?
Gang members like you shouldn't be allowed in public places where families are. There are kids here.
Sorry, I'm not a gang member.
Don't lie to me. I know a Yakuza when I see one. You're nothing but a dirty criminal who should be in jail.
What? Look, miss. Sorry for the confusion, but I'm not a member of the Yakuza. Please leave me alone and give me my earphones back. She throws the earphones at me.
You need to leave. Now!
This isn't your restaurant. I can stay here if I want to. Again, I am not a gang member. Leave me alone.
I know the owner of this place and I can get you banned. Leave now.
Oh, really? Okay, then. I place the earphones back in my ears.
Why aren't you leaving? You need to leave now.
You're not my boss and nor are you paying for my meal here. I'm staying. Cousin notices the commotion and comes up to us. Hello, ma'am. Is anything wrong?
Yes, there is. This bitch won't leave. You need to kick her out.
And why would I do that?
Look at her. Those tattoos she has is clearly a sign she's in the Yakuza. There are kids here, and she poses a danger for being a low-life criminal. You need to make her leave.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but I cannot do that. I can assure you she isn't a Yakuza. She's my cousin.
That's nonsense. You should both be locked up then. You're letting her live a life of crime.
My aunt says, what's going on here?
This bitch, pointing at me, will not leave. She is a gang member and shouldn't be allowed around children or families.
What? Okay, lady, listen to me. 1, I am not a Yakuza. Just because I have these tattoos that are of Japanese style doesn't mean I am a Japanese gangster. If you see someone walking around wearing a mariachi outfit during Halloween, do you automatically assume they're Mexican? No, you don't. Secondly, all these tattoos aren't even permanent. They're temporary 3D tattoos. They fade within weeks. What sort of gang member would walk around wearing semi-permanent tattoos? Third, I was not the one who walked up to your child to show him these things. Your son walked up to me and I tried being nice to answer his questions. Fourth, I don't give a shit about you and you don't own this restaurant to kick me out. Lastly, the Yakuza is a patriarchal boys' club exclusively to native Japanese men, so the chances of me joining are slim to none. I am not a native of Japan, nor am I male. She then starts on this tirade about how I am probably lying about the tattoos, and even went as far as to accuse me of inappropriately touching her son. Then my godfather walks in and sees the commotion. What's this all about? EM rants about how I should be kicked out for being a Yakuza, and accuse me of touching her son, and A and M be fired because they were taking my side. G doesn't react much. Then EM pulls out her trump card.
If you don't kick her out, I will get the owner to have you all kicked out and fired. I'm good friends with him.
Is that so? Well, I actually own this place with A, my wife. M is our eldest daughter and OP is my niece. Who are you again? EM's face whitens and she stammers for a response. Then her husband walks in and sees us. A tall, average-built Japanese man who looked to be in his mid-50s. He asks us in broken English what's going on. A told him the whole story as best as she could, and he immediately apologized profusely for his wife's attitude. He then turned to his wife and told her off in his native tongue. Have you ever seen an entitled person being scolded? It was pure gold. My aunt and uncle were nice enough, so they let it slide. They went back to their table and were quite quiet the rest of their meal. The kids were okay, and M gave the eldest a free ice lolly from their stock because during the exchange he looked very embarrassed and was probably used to his mom pulling stunts like that. In the end, the meeting with my godfather went pretty good. Within 2 months, the rental property was transferred to him, and he rents it out to students studying in the college near it. Edit. Yes, I know geishas aren't prostitutes. They are women who are well versed in the art of singing, dancing, music, and tea ceremony. Sorry if, in that few words, came off as me labeling them as comfort women. For those asking why EM felt compelled to tell me to leave when she mistook me as Yakuza, that is because in Japan some public places like restaurants, playgrounds, public baths, etc. do not allow people who are heavily tattooed to be on the premises, because there is still this stigma that overly tattooed people are gang members. This is maybe the reason why she was so insistent. Not defending her, just wanted to throw that out there as a possible reason why she did it. I actually ended up using the 3D tattoo set again after the ones I used faded completely. Currently, I now have 2 permanent black tattoos, one on my side and one on my lower back. Planning to get a colored one and another black one later in the year. I have moved out from my family house, that's why I managed to get my tattoos, and now living with my boyfriend who I have 1 kid with. My son is turning 2 this December. The reason why I know about the Yakuza is because I am heavily interested in Japan and Japanese culture. Been watching anime and reading manga, Japanese comics, since I was in elementary. I also have a half-Japanese best friend from high school. His dad, who is a native of Japan, currently lives there still, despite his wife and kids being here. From what I know, he has ties to the Yakuza. That's why my best friend and his family don't really go to visit the father in his homeland. I met his dad. He was actually pretty nice and polite. He mistook me for his son's girlfriend when we first met. I'm still close friends with said half-Japanese friend. 5. Back in my younger days, I worked for a locally owned pizza parlor at the same time I was going to college. Anyone who's worked in a restaurant will tell you some days are stupid slow, and some days are so busy you don't have time to go to the bathroom. It was a summer day in 1983, and unusually, it was slow. Our restaurant was on the west end of a shopping center. At the other end was a movie theater. 2 boys about 10 and 12 years old came in and took a booth. I went over and gave them menus. They ordered unlimited salad, a pitcher of soda, and a small pepperoni pizza. I went to put their order in and filled the pitcher of soda. When I took their pizza out to them, I noticed they were no longer sitting in the booth they started out in. I didn't think anything about it at the time. Since the boys were my only customers and it was almost closing time, I began getting things ready for final cleanup. I took care of the counter stuff, then walked out to do a walk through the dining room, stopping at the boys' table to see if they wanted anything else. They didn't, so I finished walking through the dining room. Then I walked by the boys' original table and saw why they'd changed. They had taken about 24 club cracker packages and crumbled them up. Cracker crumbs were all over the table, the seats, and the floor underneath the table. I see why you boys moved. I wonder if you treat your mom's house this way. They didn't say anything, but the older boy went into the alcove where the payphone was located between the bathrooms. I overheard him saying they were done and needed a ride home. I figured he was calling his mom or dad. I decided that whichever one came, I was going to show them what their sons had done. About 20 minutes later, in walks a woman wearing a pair of jeans that cost more than my entire wardrobe and an Izod polo shirt. The she-dragon walked up to me. "How dare you call my precious angels fat slobs? I want to see your manager." "Ma'am, I would not do that, and I am the manager. I want you to see what your sons did." "I don't care what they did. I'm going to have your job for this." "You can have my job after you see what they did. Being without a job will just make me stay at my dorm and study more." I led her over to the booth and showed her. Then I said, "Would your precious angels do this?" She looked at them. "Did you do this?"
Yes, ma'am,
the older boy said. At the same time, the younger boy said,
"She's lying, Mom. She did it herself."
"Why would I do that, knowing I would have to clean it up?" "I think I'll believe Jack over you." She turned to me. "Bring me 2 towels, a tub, and your vacuum cleaner." She's going to clean it up herself, I'm thinking. I go get what she asked for. She handed a towel to each of the boys. "Clean." They cleaned up the cracker crumbs. As they walked out, Jack, the older boy, said,
"She's just a dumb waitress, Mom."
She smacked the back of his head. "So was I before I married your father." Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to iPop number 12. I'm just losing my mind is what I'm doing. Kind of in a weird place right now where the heat's still making me kind of sleepy, but it somehow seems to be energizing me to the point where I'm staying awake longer. And sometimes even waking up and think, oh, it's too uncomfortable to sleep after a few hours. Then I just get up and start my day, and usually I'd get tired enough to have a nap, but I don't. It's weird. Weird. I'm getting more done, kind of, when I can get up off my butt and actually move. Like tomorrow, I'll have to go and buy drinky things. Oh, wait, no, I don't need to get drinky things. I've got an order of Volvic coming from Amazon. Yeah, because I had money off, so I figured I may as well just get it off there, it'll be cheaper. Okay, and with that bit of rambling, no idea what I said, no idea what my name is anyway. Okay, so with that, I'm heading off for now. Something, send this to your grandma. No, that's not me, that's still Kingsmill. Don't forget to poke your neighbour in the eye. No, that's just bad advice. Neuter and spay your pets? No, that's not it. What's that thing I usually say? Oh yeah, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.